Good evening and welcome to Screentone Club. This is episode 30 of your manga joint discussion podcast, being recorded on the 1st of August 2019 for release on the 6th of August 2019. We're recording this a little ahead of time due to real life problems. Well, maybe not problems, just stuff to do. My name is Elliot Page. I have done some real life problems of my own that I'm storing up because I've thrown the cat out of my room and she's clearly unhappy about it. Sorry, Ruby. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Mr. Andy Hanley. How you doing, Andy?
Yes, but speaking of real life problems, I should have been packing today. I spent all day reading manga instead, which is very on brand for this podcast, and we can get into that. But my priorities got weirdly skewed today.
Awesome! We're a bad influence here at Screentone.club. So, if you like Screentone.club and want to help support our bad habits and life decisions and choices, such as, dropping £80 on manga on payday for some reason, Elliot, you can support us on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/Screentone Club for the mere sum of $1 a month, you can support us and you can help us do things like, in my case, buy a new microphone arm, which I'm now using. Hooray! Because the old one was literally falling apart. So, thank you everyone who supports us. Also, those who pledge $3 or more a month get to vote on what we cover in our monthly bonus episodes. Unfortunately, I have invited people to start putting in votes for the new August bonus episode, and people are already doing the exact thing I told them not to. So, democracy has failed. What did you expect? So there's that. Also on the Patreon bent, thank you to Rob Jessup, who is part of our shout-outs tier, who you'd think by now he'd have gotten sick of this whole shout-out thing, but we greatly appreciate it. Thank you ever so much, Rob. So, moving on to the podcast proper, we have some returning champions, which is mostly this time it's the Elliot Page catch-up section, what's new there. First and foremost, Dead Demons DeDeDeDe Destruction. I finally, after reading Volume 5, I immediately bought and read Volume 6, which we talked about previously, Andy, in a previous episode. And I refresh my memory, you said it was kind of a catching up volume, or otherwise?
Volume 6 for me was very much a kind of like first half felt a bit like it was spinning its wheels, and then suddenly those wheels hit the ground again for the second half and stuff seemed to be accelerating quite quickly.
Okay, I must admit, I feel that the spinning the wheels feeling for me was going through the entire volume. I mean, it's clearly getting to something, and there is revving up for something. Like, it does some jumping around to fill in some back details. It kind of brings more characters to the fore. It does spend some time spinning wheels, but a lot of it is very much like, turning the characters over on the grill a few times to make sure they're brown on both sides, if that metaphor works. But it is a case of like filling out the characters. It also features like the single most, not uninspired, what's the word? Sort of perfunctory sex scene in manga. And this is Inio Asano, who has done perfunctory sex before now. It's really hilarious in that it's half a page of just two characters going, and then it's over. And I don't know, just it made me laugh so much seeing that. And then my parents asked me what I was laughing at, and I couldn't really just say, sex in this comic. But it did make me laugh a great deal. Futaba, I think that's the name of the character from Out of Town with the little button nose, who's part of the protest movement. Her sort of trials back and forth are really fascinating, especially for a character who kind of quote unquote only just came into the story. So fascinating to see what happens there, but there's a lot of fingers and a lot of triggers at this point in Dead Demons, which meant, of course, unsurprisingly, I got to the end of the volume and was like, okay, I'm ready for someone to pull the trigger. Oh, crap, I got to wait for the next volume. Ugh. So that's where I currently am with that. Still very much into it. But this volume did feel a bit of a weird interregnum, at least for myself.
Yeah, I think it's just that kind of like the second half of that volume, it suddenly returns its focus back to the whole kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, the world's totally gonna end. This is heading in an apocalyptic direction, and it kind of suddenly picks up on that again, having kind of parked it for a little while. And I think that's kind of what gave me the feel of just like, oh, okay, we're actually kind of heading towards some kind of end game here of some kind after, like you say, spending quite a lot of time kind of just turning its characters over and seeing what's underneath.
Yeah, I almost feel that because it has like highlighted its end state, or at least a big event in the future to come, that's the bit that's the least interesting, or at least I feel like it needs to kind of get on with it and do that, if that makes sense. Like, the series has jumped around in timeline quite a few parts already, but I feel that given the amount of time it's shown us what is to come, I now want it to get on with resolving that kind of toot sweet so it can move on to something else, which doesn't have to be further in the timeline, but I want it to resolve that end so either it can, fill in more character moments or even finish or God knows what. Like, I feel like that has been highlighted enough times and sort of gilded that I just want it to do it at this point.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely, especially kind of come volume 6, it almost feels like there are multiple scenes of kind of character taps on calendar of like, oh, this will be a bad time kind of thing. It's like, yeah, we know. Like, let's either see how this plays out or kind of like circumvent it to do whatever you're going to do next. So yeah, like I'm curious to see, like, given the build up it's had, what they're doing with that exactly and where it's going to end up. But yeah, like, I am more interested and invested in kind of the characters and their own dealings within the situation at hand than I am the big picture of like, well, what's going to happen to Tokyo / the world at the end of all this?
Yeah, I'm much more interested in what's going to happen to Kodode's Isobanyan collection. So, that's the one thing that matters, is the giant mushroom man. He might be in a mushroom cloud before long. Anyway, so another quick hit on the returning champions is Chainsaw Man, which is now up to chapter 31, I believe, in the Shonen Jump app. I still dearly love this series, although I mentioned it before, and whenever we've discussed this series, I have the fear in it where some big stuff happened on top of the previous big stuff. And this is a much more permanent big stuff. And so it's burning through like entire other mangas worth of plot lines and storyline beats at a rate of knots that is making me fearful. Like, I've said this again previously for Chainsaw Man, but I worry that it's being accelerated to keep it in print. And I don't know, but I do love it dearly. There's a great scene with Power and Denji where they're like, let's be smart. And it's like, oh God, you guys are going to be, yep, here we go. An entire chapter of them being morons. Great. But it's definitely pulling more twists of, who are the real monsters? Spoilers, it's man. So we shall see where that goes. I'm still very much in it, but it kind of introduced so many different elements of targets or villains or problems that I want it to kind of just pick one and stick to it now, because all of them are compelling. And so at this point, I'm just getting my focus split into 4 directions.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm probably like maybe 3 or so chapters behind. I can't remember what the last chapter I got to was, but like, definitely there was a point, I mean, to your whole thing about, it feels like it's burning through in a desperate attempt to stay in print. It kind of starts like offing people left, right and centre at one point, and it's like, oh, this is going somewhere. And then it feels like it kind of, it wheels some of that back again, as if it's just like, it had that kind of like, okay, need to do something crazy to make sure that I don't get cancelled. And then, once that fire was put out, it's like, I can probably like let up on this a little bit now. And yeah, I don't know. I've kind of cooled off on it in terms of just like not feeling a desire of like, oh, I must read the latest chapter every week, but I will go back to it and kind of catch up at some point. It feels, I don't know, there's something about it that makes it feel less kind of desperate for me to have to read it on a weekly basis right now.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I feel like binging it is probably a slightly less exhausting way to read it in my case, because I am devouring it the second it goes up on Sunday night, because I am very hot to boot for it. But that is burning me somewhat, because each time I go into it and go, oh, and just like shove all 20 pages into my gob and then go, oh no, I want more. Oh shit. So yeah, maybe being a bit delayed is probably a smarter move. Maybe I should start doing that more often. So yeah. Anyway, that's Chainsaw Man. Still deeply in love with it. All of the characters are morons, and I love them. Apart from the ones who are sad, who are very, very sad, and you don't blame them for being sad. Poor bastards. Anyway, moving on. So, we're moving on to the main portion of this show, where we kind of synchronized our brains in a Pacific Rim style, like, synchronization thingy ding, where we both took a big step forward and said, hey, how about this Manga Plus thing? Manga Plus available from Shueisha, I believe.
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
Which is an online platform with mostly English translated digital manga available for free, with adverts in the Android app, at least. And it's also in some other languages. I know there's 1 or 2 series that are in Spanish, which is nice. The navigation's a nightmare, but whatever. And so we both picked series from this that we had recommended to us, or we just sort of stumbled across. Do you want to take first pick, Andy?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, first thing I will say about this service from personal experience.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
Is if you're new to the service and you download the app, make sure you go into the settings and make sure it's set to high resolution images. Because I don't know about you, but like my tablet, when I downloaded the app, it defaulted to low resolution images, and I kind of thumbed through the first chapter of like one of the series we were reading. I was like, man, this looks like garbage. It's just like JPEG compression from hell. And I was like, I wonder if there's any settings that lets me change the quality here. And then found that it was in its low bandwidth setting. So I changed it to high bandwidth and everything looked fine.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, if you try this app and you think stuff looks grody, that's probably why. So just make sure you check that setting. Because weirdly, I also tried it on my iPhone, and that set itself to high res straight away. So I don't know quite what the secret sources of how it decides that, or whether it's just some random thing on my tablet. But yeah, that needed some doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, on my tablet, my e-ink tablet thingy that I have, it looked fine. So maybe I got the high resolution images. Who knows? I'll have to go check after this, but it looked fine. Anyway, sorry, please continue.
Yeah. And the other thing that I found with my tablet is if I was in the midst of reading something and kind of like paused for any decent amount of time, in terms of the actual tablet's lock screen doing its thing and locking, etc. When I came back, no images would load until I restarted the tablet, which is also suboptimal, because I had a couple of occasions where, I just went to make a cup of tea or whatever, and then I came back, it's like, oh, no images beyond where I'm at will actually load anymore. It just shows the Manga Plus logo. And, I quit out of the app, went back in it, it's still the same problem. Checked my internet connection of has my internet gone down? And no, it just completely refused to do anything till I've restarted the entire system. So, certainly some stuff that needs tweaking and fixing with that, I would say.
That sounds wild. Yeah, I didn't have that problem. I did have the problem of it, just losing my place in chapters and it being difficult to figure out where I was. And also, because I'm on a monochrome e-ink tablet, some of the elements in the app are very bad, when it comes to contrast. So stuff just I was having to look at my PC and my tablet to cross-reference where UI elements I need to click were. But that's very much an Elliot Page has a weird tablet problem.
Yeah, I can imagine that being a bit of a nightmare. But anyway, yeah. So on to my pick. My pick for this podcast is Blue Flag, which I'd seen a few people talking about as kind of like a romantic drama series, and I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So it's like, I should check this out. And yeah, as mentioned at the top of this podcast, my original plan this morning was before breakfast, I'll read what I need to be prepared for this show. I'll read 7 to 10 chapters, kind of like a volume and a bit's worth. That'll be fine. And I ended up reading all 46 chapters that are currently available of this series.
Holy shit, dude.
Stop. My day was kind of swallowed up whole by this series, which kind of probably gives you a hint as to where I'm at on it.
Seriously? All 46 chapters?
Yep, the whole thing.
I'm guessing at 46 chapters it's not yet finished.
No, it's still very much ongoing. It was actually a bit of a nightmare moment of oh, what? There's no more of this? I was still ready for more. But anyway, so Blue Flag is the story of a boy called Taichi, who is your typical high school student. And right off the bat, it kind of very subtly introduces what is one of the themes that runs through this manga, because Taichi introduces himself kind of via internal monologue as kind of effectively he posits, here's a question that people often ask, who would you choose between your girlfriend or your best friend? And he basically shrugs it off and says, well, I don't have either of those things because nobody really cares about me. which is kind of instantly proved to be something of a lie because we then see him with a few of his friends. And then we also see that he ends up at the start of the year in the same class as a guy called Toma, who is kind of a childhood friend of his, who is kind of the typical good-looking ace of everything that kind of every high school manga ever has. Like, he's a star of the baseball team, he's super popular, he's really nice to everybody, like, everybody loves him, he's just a great guy.
He's a really nice beefcake as well. Like,
and yes,
he's almost drawn in a completely different style. Like, he's from a different manga almost.
Yes, yeah, he does feel like he's come out of some kind of other series entirely. And then alongside that, there is another character who we're kind of introduced to a little bit earlier on, Futaba Kaze, who is again kind of stereotypical in a sense. She's really clumsy and ditzy. She's pretty shy, and she kind of gets called out instantly by some of Taichi's friends of like, "Oh, I don't know why you don't like her. Like, you seem to just have an instant dislike of her," which. That's never really kind of like doubled down on at all in terms of like why that comment is made. But regardless, at some point, kind of Taichi sees Futaba like reaching for some books in the top shelf in the library and decides to be a nice guy and say, "Hey, I'll help get these down to you," which immediately proves to be a bad idea. One, because he's not actually any taller than Futaba. He's like 1 centimeter taller, so like that wasn't any help. And also, it turns out she was trying to reach for a whole bunch of books on relationship advice and kind of like, how to woo your one true love and all of that kind of stuff. And as it turns out, Futaba has something of a crush on Toma and kind of like basically asked Taichi's advice to say, "Hey, like, you're friends with him. Like, can you tell me what he likes and what kind of girls he's into, because, I'm kind of interested in him." And so kind of the early running is very much, I'd always call it a little Toradora-esque in terms of its beginnings, in terms of, kind of Taichi trying to help Futaba out and kind of point her in the right direction to be noticed by Toma. And some other characters kind of come in and into the orbit of these two. And of course, as time goes on, kind of the relationship between Futaba and Taichi kind of changes as they get to know each other and spend more time together. We also learn a lot about Toma's crush in particular, which is not at all what Taichi thinks his crush is, and that becomes another very important kind of pivotal part of the series. Futaba has a best friend of her own who also has a similar problem in terms of her kind of romantic interest. And kind of the series starts out on a pretty kind of comedic bent. Like, it's pretty light-hearted and fluffy and sort of fun and quite cutesy. But as the further it goes on, especially when you get really deep into the series, as I ended up doing, like the drama and kind of the interpersonal relationships become way more kind of serious and way more important. Like the comedy stays, and the comedy continues to be really good throughout, but like it gets way more interested in its human drama. And I guess that there are kind of a few focuses to the series. Like, one is very much about kind of sexuality and gender and kind of, various characters trying to get to grips with that in terms of kind of their own relationships. And the series actually does a really good job of digging into some of the side characters who you assume are just going to be around to just do whatever they do. But actually kind of they get their own kind of arcs of just like, hey, this is the deal with this character, which then kind of plays into the other side of the series, which, as per that opening, is very much about the kind of the internality of the characters and how they see themselves versus the externality of them and how others see them. And kind of, Taichi is the starting point of that, because he kind of sees himself as like, I'm not really any good at anything. Nobody really cares about me. No, why would anyone be interested in me? I'm just kind of very, very dull and average. And, really puts himself down on that point. Whereas other people actually really think a lot of him and kind of think he's a good guy in various ways. And then obviously Futaba kind of, has a lot of issues with her kind of self-image and how she feels that, she looks to other people compared to how others maybe see her. And then there are some really interesting, again, some of the side characters actually get some of the most interesting stuff around that. Like, there's one character who seems like she's just your kind of typical kind of, outgoing, flirty, wants to get with all the guys kind of character. And then she gets her whole arc where basically her entire deal is like, no, I don't want anyone to fall in love with me. I just want some really good buddies, and I just happen to get on better with guys. And like, she has this intense frustration that whenever she spends any time with guys in the hope of being friends with them, that it always turns into something romantic on their end, and they always kind of, see her as kind of, a romantic interest or potential conquest or whatever it may be, whereas like all she's looking for is somebody that she can just buddy around with. And it's just some really good stuff with all of those characters, and in the end, I think that's what kind of drove me through to read as much as I did, is I fell in love with the main cast of characters pretty early on, and then kind of fell in love with the wider cast of characters. And I just had a very intense desire to see what was going on with them, like, how their stories and their relationships, etc., would progress. And that just drove me through, like a freight train until I got to the end of everything that's currently available.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, when we made the agreement about this sort of episode, we said, read as much as you feel like. I kind of, first I want to say I do enjoy the series, and I echo a lot of what you just mentioned, although to a lesser degree, because I got to about 10 chapters in and then said, okay, I've read basically 2.5 volumes worth, because hell, the first chapter alone is 80 odd pages nearly. And it's one of those like monthly series, I believe. So it's large, nice, big chapters that get time to breathe. And yeah, where I am in chapter 10, it's kind of got the main cast, the core 4, really kind of in place, and they've all done like at least one circuit of trying to get their hold of themselves. And, Taichi has himself opened up quite a lot, and it packs a lot into the series. Like, it's really dense and really meaty, and also just really, there's nothing, there's no filler, there's no fluff, there's also very little of watching the characters spin wheels, because even when they're like personally spinning wheels, that's on purpose and it's part of their character, and it informs a greater part of them. So as I say, like, I'm on chapter 10 and it's got the 4 main characters, and there's some other characters kind of on the fringes that you're aware of, but it's done the first main arc, which was the sports day, basically, which was a big old deal. But yeah, as you say, the internality versus externality, and also, people projecting outwards. I mean, the unspoken, or perhaps it is later spoken thing with Taichi at the start of it, where he's upset about Futaba, is basically because he sees parts that he doesn't like of himself in her, which is painfully relatable, but also he is kind of intensely self-destructive about it, and also destructive of his personalities and relationships with others. It starts with him having friends, but they're all these sort of the weird 3 sort of gaggle of comedic weird doofuses who are very pleasant, but they're the gag sort of crowd almost, who are like far higher achievers than him. They're bigger nerds and all that sort of stuff. And so, they're kind of off in their own world, and it's left Taichi alone. And, Toma, like as you say, the very muscular, attractive, like sports star, like love of the year, already has like a whole heap of stuff going on around him, where there's been a big gap. They were childhood friends, and there's a big gap there that they never really crossed. But the moment either of them tries to reach across it, the other one grabs the hand, and it's really powerful as a part of, hey, keeping in touch is important, and it may seem daunting, but it's very, very important to do so if you would like to maintain those relationships. And also, frankly, if the other person is willing, it's a lot easier than you'd imagine. But yeah, I really love the characters. They're all adorable little sweetie pies. Futaba especially is like she kind of, initially you think, oh, good grief, she is the mousiest, squeakiest girl there is. And she, puts herself out there and tries to do things and grows in multiple directions naturally. And it's really really powerful watching her like scramble, basically trying to get her teeth around something. So it's really fun to read. But also very impactful. Like, after the 10 chapters I've read, I was kind of burnt out a little, because it's, it's very, incisive. Like it cuts you as the reader almost, I'd say. Does that tally for you, Hannah's? I mean, you've just read the entire thing in one day, so maybe you have a few more scars than I do, metaphorically.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly gets even more kind of into the reason and even kind of deeper with that stuff. I mean, in relative terms, those first 10 chapters are kind of some of the lighter content.
We've already had characters crying in the rain, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, if there's one thing that I would maybe criticize about kind of the later chapters of it is, it clearly, you know, it has the things that it wants to tackle around kind of gender and sexuality. Sometimes the conversations characters have around that feels a bit more like you're reading somebody's Twitter thread than an actual conversation. Like, it feels like it very much wants to have the debate about, you know, homosexuality and homophobia as one example, where it pulls in all these kind of different outlooks that are all kind of, you know, genuine and valid and interesting to bounce off each other and to bring into a debate and into a conversation. But it feels like it's done in a way that is maybe not quite as naturalistic as it should be for the series in question, which is kind of weird, because at the same time, there are parts of this series that are very good at kind of capturing kind of like, especially like natural teenage conversation and behavior. Like there's some really good moments throughout this series where a somewhat serious conversation gets like derailed by somebody saying something goofy or dumb or just pointing some other thing out, and everybody's like, oh wait, what? That's cool. And just like starts talking about something else entirely and forgetting about the kind of, you know, important life affirming moment or whatever that they were having. Like there's a really good moment later on where like a character's trying to kind of put her point across for something, and she can't quite remember the word that she wants to use, and she kind of like, she gesticulates and kind of goes through different options, and then somebody else chimes in with the word she's looking for. It's like, yeah, that's it. Like, how did I forget that word? And there are lots of like really nice little moments like that are just like, feel so relatable as just normal conversation where, you know, you can't quite place the word that you want to use and things like that you don't often see in manga or in prose in general, where, you know, it's very much a kind of, hey, here's what I want to say, and, you know, I'm just going to put those words down and not beat around the bush. So it feels kind of strange when the series does go off into kind of, you know, I'm just going to have this in-depth debate in a way that just doesn't quite fit with the natural flow of how these characters would talk.
Yeah, I mean, the forgetting the word bit is something that has happened to me, like in important and in very idle conversation. It's kind of one of these like human element things where, you know, it's very difficult to write to make it seem natural and not just like a weird gag setup. Like, it's very difficult to try and arrange all those pieces to make it a piece of character developed dialogue that can be a discussion with others involved who are sort of watching and going, huh? So, you know, that's difficult to do. But as you say, there are some times where either in monologue or in conversation where it's like, oh, okay, you've got a script to run through here, and this is a bit off the chain. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like some of its moments, especially its quiet or silent moments, make up for that. Like, as I mentioned, there's already been characters crying in the rain, there's already been characters like basically like going deer in headlights, which was really harrowing as a like moment in the series of like, oh, okay, that's bad. So yeah, it's, as I say, it all makes the characters a lot more enjoyable and believable, and just a lot more, not, I was going to say attractive, but you know what I mean? Like, you want to be in their world and kind of see what happens to them, which oddly I would say is definitely a massive plus for a romantic series or a drama, really. I was about to say romantic comedy, but it's not that comedic. I mean, it's funny, it's got some good japes, but, you know, it's very much a case of more just being amused or happy being around the characters than, hey, check out this gag. So
yeah. I mean, I think that's always, for me, a good sign for a series like this, where you kind of end up rooting for everybody. Like, it's not one of those series where you just pick like a pairing, like, oh man, I hope those two get together, and now whatever to everybody else. It's like, even though there are kind of these multi-tiered kind of relationships where, you know, regardless of what happens, somebody's going to get hurt in this.
Oh yes, like we'll be lucky if like half the people come out happy.
Yeah, but it's like, despite that, you invariably are like, man, I hope there's some kind of magical solution where everyone can come out of this okay, because I kind of really love them all in their own ways.
Well, I think that kind of works, and that's what is important in a manga, especially a dramatic manga, where you want to see everyone learn and grow and kind of come out of it for the better. I mean, I feel like maybe like, so, I mean, I've only watched the movie, so I can't speak directly to the manga, but A Silent Voice kind of did that, where by the end, you're not just like, you're not flying a shipping flag. You're just like, please everyone be okay. Like, I hope people don't fall out too hard and they can move past this and they can self-actualize in a healthy manner. Like, which is difficult to try and encourage because it's much easier to be like, KX Yuri OTP forever. Whereas, this series totally does nail that of, oh man, I hope all these characters are okay. People are going to have to get hurt as a result of everything that's happening, and I just hope they're okay. Like, it's that which is powerful. I mean, to draw a strange comparison, I'm reading Domestic Girlfriend at the moment, which I got most of in a Humble Bundle, and it's a romantic comedy, but it's really just rambling on. Like, it just goes on and stuff happens, and I've read 9 volumes and on and on and on and on, and oh, he got caught with this girl, and oh, this happened, and oh, what's happening here? And there's just no real skin in the game from any of it. Like, there's, characters have non-romantic, elements to them, but the whole thing is just this ongoing tumbleweed, which frankly makes it very light and easy reading, which makes it quite pleasant. But I would, 100 times suggest Blue Flag over Domestic Girlfriend, which, but also because they're very different things. Like, Blue Flag is a very powerful, emotive, teenage, romantic and also dramatic series where, there's a lot of, characters coming to terms with themselves more than anything, which, hell, is happening to all of them. Like Toma, especially, who is someone who, like, unsurprisingly, the character who is the single most exuding confidence person has a number of things undermining him. But yeah, him especially, he's a sweetie. Do you remember Kids on the Slope, the anime series?
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember the Christian, drum boy? What's his name?
Yeah, I forget their names, but yeah, like I kind of drew that comparison in my head as well. Like, there's a little bit of a kind of Kids on the Slope feel to some of the relationships in here and the characters as well. Yeah,
although I feel like Kids on the Slope kind of had too much to work with and didn't pull it all together. Like, again, the religion angle and other sort of stuff. It's like, what's this doing here? I'm sure there's a reason for it to be here, and oh, nope, series is over. Yeah, man, I wish I'd liked that series more. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I definitely found myself also drawing the Silent Voice comparison, like, while I was reading through this. Like, it's one of those series it's really unfair to compare anything to, because, Silent Voice is much fated and, deals with some really kind of major topics above and beyond even what this series does. But in terms of kind of building that cast of characters and, like you say, wanting them all to come out okay, or at least having learned and bettered themselves, like, it's definitely on the same kind of level for me.
Yeah. But no, I really enjoyed it. As I say, I got to 10 chapters and the whole thing is available on Manga Plus to read for free. So I'm probably going to go back and do a little more reading, although I think I'll take it a little easy because, I mean, you wouldn't have read 46 chapters of it if you didn't enjoy it. I mean, that's a good sign of like, oh crap, where'd the day go? Oh, well, that wasn't exactly a loss. So
yeah. It's also one of those series, like, it is a master of the cliffhanger. Like, I mean, part of the reason why I kept going back to it is, every chapter, it always finishes at a really smart spot of, like, it's either a big, like, mic drop moment from a character, or it's just a more subtle moment of like, oh, how is this character going to react to this, and so on and so forth. And so that always kind of kept me coming back.
Yeah, there's always an open question, or a, hey, we didn't end this on a massive cliffhanger, but you're going to want to come back to this, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I also really like the series aesthetically. Like, the character designs are all great. Like, it's super expressive in all sorts of ways. Like, whether it's comedy or just there's some really great panels where you kind of have two panels side by side, and there's just like a subtle eye movement from a character that's just a kind of like, what's up with this moment kind of thing. And it's really good at doing stuff like that. It has some really good running gags as well. It's like there's a moment earlier on where like Futaba's crying and Taichi says, oh, like, if you open your mouth, then like that'll stop you crying, because I can't remember what the logic is of that. But that like becomes it becomes a running joke that kind of comes back several times in the series. Like, there's a moment when another character starts crying, and Futaba says, like, oh, like, drops a whole, if you open your mouth, you'll stop crying thing, which then results in a panel which is, like, everybody sat around this table, just sat there with their mouths open, just, like, trying it out, which is just, like, a really good visual gag. But it's also used in a kind of, in a smarter, kind of more subtle way, where there's another moment where, like, Futaba's upset with Taichi, and you kind of see, it's kind of a shot that's almost over her shoulder. It's kind of like from the side and slightly to the back, but you can kind of tell, like, she's holding her head up with her mouth open to try and not cry. And, like, Taichi doesn't notice it, because Taichi's an idiot when it comes to this stuff, but, like, it's a really good little subtle kind of callback to earlier in the series that is a very clear, like, oh, this character is, like, super upset in this moment.
And you should know, damn it, you taught me this.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of showing, like, Taichi's kind of lost in his own thoughts in that moment, and is kind of, like, more worried about himself than anybody else. But it's a really kind of good, subtle kind of nods to the reader of just like, look, here's what's up here. Like, you know, you know what this means. And it's little things like that that are just really, really enjoyable in terms of how it kind of keeps that continuity going in a way that feels really natural. Like, you know, you get in jokes with your friends and, you know, things that keep getting like thrown up in conversation. Like, hey, remember that time you did that? And it's really good at pulling that kind of stuff together to give that sort of, you know, everyday feel of like these relationships between characters.
Yeah, you mentioned the art actually, and I'm fully on board with you. I really like the art. I mean, especially the characters, where I'm trying to think of a way it doesn't make it sound silly, but either way, all the characters look like they're from different series, but I mean that in a really good, positive way, where they are their own person in that they are a fully actualized whole that have their own expression sheet, their own like body composition, their own posture set, and their own way of looking, which is, instead of it being like, oh, yeah, we've got boy model, girl model, change the hair and the face a bit and you'll be fine. Maybe change the boobs a bit. Haha, check it out. It's much more about like, no, this character is a whole complete creature and they have all of their, you know, visual representation that's integral to themselves and is locked within their form. And I'm probably making this sound really pretentious, but that's what I felt like when I was reading it, because Futaba, bless her, is basically like a pixie. Like, she's a little round fluffy manju, like Dango pixie. Like, she's all soft and bouncy and, you know, kind of cute. Taichi is like a rather dour looking tired mess when he by default, but when he kind of pulls himself into a higher state or a more compassionate state, he kind of elevates, but he is still the same character. And then, of course, you know, Toma basically looks like he walked out of Kuroko's basketball, except not quite as Yari-rific, I suppose. But that's what I feel like with the characters, is that they are their self-contained systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think that even extends kind of outside of those main characters. Like, I mean, Masami, Futaba's friends, kind of like, she looks like she comes out of another show as well. Like, she's pretty aloof and kind of, you know, looks way more mature than the other characters, which again, kind of the series plays with later on.
I thought she was a university student for a while. I'm like, wow, who let the university student here? Oh, whoops.
Yeah, exactly. And then some of Toma's other friends are kind of, you know, they feel like they come from various different stripes. So yeah, like I'm definitely with you on that. And the series also has a good, what I feel like is like a kind of Peanuts inspired super deformed kind of mode as well, which it applies really well for its comedy. And I think it uses that more and more as it goes on for kind of, you know, moments of comic relief, where again, it's just really good at kind of facial expressions of just like characters kind of, you know, just looking surprised at another character's goofiness, etc., that I really enjoyed. Like, you know, I was moved close to tears by this series at times, but I also had some good kind of belly laughs out of it as well from time to time. Like, it manages to cover that spectrum really well, and I think the visuals are actually a big part of making that stuff work.
Totally. I mean, I wonder if the little keychain fish guts gag comes back again, which is just absurd. When it first shows up, you're like, what? what is okay, fine, yeah.
Well, yeah, and again, that's another really great kind of natural moment where like it breaks a moment of dramatic tension because somebody's trying, Futaba's trying to kind of make her point in kind of quite a fraught kind of emotional moment, but just says something so stupid that like they both just end up cracking up. It's just like, what the heck was that even? And there are so many really good little moments like that where somebody's trying to be serious and then just something stupid comes into the conversation and everybody just kind of, loses sight of what they were actually like worried or concerned about at that moment.
Sounds like a lot of my attempts to have serious conversations, frankly, but but no one's around to draw them.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm definitely, I definitely want to read more of this. Like it's definitely a series I'd like to see given kind of a full-blown release with volumes and that where it can maybe get the attention of more people because like it's a really good series. Like I feel like it's also just a series that I've kind of been jonesing for a while. Like it's been a while since I found a really good kind of romantic drama that I can really kind of get my teeth into that kind of hits the notes that this one does, and it was just kind of catnip to me at the end of the day. Hence me reading 46 chapters in a day.
Yeah, that sounds gnarly. I mean, hell, at least the Manga Plus app held up enough for it to actually show you 46 chapters, even if you did have problems.
Yeah, for sure. Like again, kind of speaks to how much I enjoyed it. That is just like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to like fix this bug and restart my tablet to keep reading, even though I could just stop and do what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
God, we're such fucking IT nerds, aren't we? You can tell we worked in computers, didn't you? Can't you? Anyway, but yeah, that sounds great. I mean, yeah, one of the fun things about Manga Plus, fun in, scare quotes, is that it will keep some of the like notes from the publisher, from the like tankobon, or the sort of the anthology release, and it will have things like volume 2 on sale now, and it will have an asterisk next to it saying Japanese market only, and it's like, motherfucker, like, god damn it. Like, yeah, I would love for this to get more of an airing. I mean, maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit here, but do you think this would jump well to anime? Like, I mean, you invoked at the start of this review Toradora, which I know you absolutely adore. Absolutely adora. But do you think this would work well in anime? Like, do you think that's got a chance of happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits. Like, you can totally. It's definitely a series where there are a few points where I kind of found in my mind's eye is like, oh yeah, like I can imagine this being a really good kind of scene in an anime. I mean, again, there's some really great moments where characters just like lose their temper and just kind of flip and kind of have a rant at somebody, and you could just kind of imagine like voice actresses just kind of smacking their chops at that kind of stuff, because there's some really good material that people could get their teeth around. And yeah, like I think it would fit really well, like provided it got a good adaptation. I would be all for seeing it in animated form.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. As I say, I only got 10, quote unquote, only 10 chapters in. But again, that first chapter, oh boy, it's a big one. But yeah, the first chapter is so big and nice that I'd say it's a really good first chapter to read just to see if you'd like it. And I think most people would. I don't know, I really like this. So, thumbs up from us. Of course, the problem now is, Andy, that because you read all 46 chapters of it, we aren't going to return champions it for a while, are we? So
no, that's that is true.
Yeah.
So and it's like you say, I think it's either like bi-weekly or monthly. So yeah, I'm going to have to set my hands for a while to even get a small extra slice of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, them's the breaks when you find something that's really your jam. Is you go hog, I suppose. Anyway, moving on, talking about, so another series on, Manga Plus. And this was initially a series that I thought I'd stolen from you, Andy, because I've seen it getting quite a lot of praise in Twitter circles that I kind of keep a vague eye on. Like, the Discord server that I generally sort of just lurk on to steal good ideas for manga to read. Sorry, everyone. But it's Spy Family. It's one of these series that have an X in the middle, but I am given to be told that the X is silent. So it reads a Spy X Family, but that just sounds even sillier now I said it out loud. Don't do that. So Spy Family, concerns a a main character called Twilight, who is a very dapper, very sort of lithe, sharp-chinned young man who is probably like mid-late 20s, maybe early 30s, pushing it, who is like the super spy of the country he works in. I think it's the Western country. Basically, the world is split into two massive superpowers that are bordering each other, and there's a massive amount of Cold War-esque, although less sort of doctrinaire and, imperialist, where both of them are kind of trying to inch towards peace, but are also engaging in massive counterintelligence and intelligence operations in each other's turf. And Twilight is the super spy above all super spies in the country. Gets the job done with panache, doesn't ruffle any feathers, sometimes runs up a bill, but, he's well regarded. And he's given his toughest assignment yet, which is, hey, there is a reclusive minister who is trying to foment a rebellion and a coup d'etat, and he's a massive ultranationalist, and we at the very minimum, we need to stop him from doing this. We don't need to just kill him, we just need to stop him from doing this stupid fucking rebellion. But he's such a recluse that the only thing he comes out for is basically anything involving his single child son, who you find later. And so, Twilight is told, hey, go adopt a kid, get the kid into this exclusive upper crust, hilariously poncy, fancy academy. And then when it comes to Parents' Day, you can find this minister and do what you need to do. And the academy being very, 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 buttoned up. I'm afraid I don't have my notes, so I don't have the, proper nouns. I dropped my, notepad in, a gutter earlier today. Whoops. Don't do that. But basically is told, hey, you've got to have a wife. We want a 2-parent family because we're really, really up ourselves at this, fake Eton. And so he goes and has to find a wife. And he manages to find one while shopping for clothes for a little girl he picks up from an orphanage. More on her later. And so he finds this lady, and she seems quite skilled in the arts of spycraft, even if he doesn't quite put his finger on why. And he says, hey, let's get married and live together, I guess. And that way we can, get on with, life. And it turns out the little girl, who I forget the name of, I'm very sorry, she's a little sweetie pie. She's an Esper. She has psychic powers. She can read people's minds. It's a bit trying on her, but she can totally do that. So she knows that Twilight's a spy right from the off, but is glad at least for someone who is willing to value her and take her out of this godforsaken orphanage she's in. And the lady is an assassin. She's kind of an aggressive assassin for hire who's just trying to keep out of the way of her parents, who keep trying to get her to marry and settle down. And she wants to preserve her freedom and her way of life and the murder she does. And so she joins in on this family, and they take out a flat and start on the project of trying to get the little girl into this very, very expensive academy. And frankly, I know the phrase is overused, but hijinks ensue, especially with the combination of different powers. Like Twilight is a super spy. He's good at disguises. He's always in the right place at the right time. The little girl is an Esper, as mentioned, but is also kind of socially withdrawn and also extremely anxious to maintain her newfound life and family, which she loves dearly. And it kind of is all these different little motivations all crashing together to make it really fascinating and kind of weirdly heartfelt, where, it's a family, like a fake family, but they do have both a vested interest in each other's welfare, and it kind of becomes apparent that all of them kind of have, are very happy to be together. Like Twilight will not brook any kind of insult for those around him. The assassin mother will threaten to assassinate you. And the little girl just wants to have a happy family life. So it kind of is nice in that form and fashion, where everyone is very, very invested in their fake, made up, self-chosen family to keep it all together, even when, say, for example, you lamp the target child you're supposed to make friends with in the gob. So that's a good fun. And it kind of sends up this whole spycraft world and all the ridiculous pretense and aristocracy that is grown up and festered within it, and plays around with it a great deal. Like, hell, parts of it look like King's College, Cambridge, which I walk past most of the time. So there's that. So I kind of enjoy it on that angle. And it's only got 9 chapters in, so it's just kind of setting up. It's got, people in school, and it's starting to have all these different elements coalesce together. But I really enjoyed it. Like, it's a really good fun romp. It kind of saves its ammunition for when it wants to expend it. It has a lot of fun little gags and jokes, and the fact that most people are in on what Twilight is up to is really beneficial. The Foglers, they pretend to be a family called the Foglers. There we are, I was looking for that word. And so, yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, as you can tell by me just monopolizing the microphone for a good 10 minutes, I suppose, at this point. And also, because there's only like 9 chapters, you can kind of burn through it really fast. And it even has an extra chapter, which is just spy activities, which is great fun as well, because it's just the characters doing what they do best. And great comedy, and action comes of it. So what did you think of this, Andy? Sorry, I went completely nuts there.
No, that's quite right. Yeah, I kind of vacillated on it a little bit. Like, I was kind of like really into the idea initially of just like, oh yeah, like a spy that has to get married, have a kid. Like, when they introduced that said kid was an Esper, it's like, I'm not sure I'm into this. But then like once they kind of get the full family, quote unquote, together, I kind of warmed up to it again. Like, I don't know. It was kind of like a pretty simple pleasure for me. Like, I kind of just quite enjoyed kind of flipping through and reading the thing. Like, I didn't have any massively kind of strong opinions one way or the other about it. It was just like, yeah, I don't know, that was kind of fun, and was like kind of ended up liking the characters. So sure, that's cool. Like, I'm not sure, like, for me, I'm not sure whether it has kind of legs beyond what I read, though. Like, it felt like it was really doubling down on the whole, like, okay, well now, Anya, the kid, has to go to school, and, the focus became very much about her and her kind of like requirements and her kind of relationships at school, and that felt like it was getting a bit old even after a few chapters of it. So I'm not sure whether it can kind of move on and freshen things up, but it felt like it was maybe going to start getting stuck in a rut, which kind of worried me a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning her name, by the way, Anya. I've been trying to remember that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think making her an Esper is a way of, like, from a writing point of view, to try and give her some hidden knowledge, because all of them have a secret, or at least something with them. And so I think that's helpful, at least for her as well, to make her a more interesting character. But also, I feel like the Esper powers, if anything, just make it more annoying for her, whereas, like, when she's trying to apologize to someone, like, she can just hear the voices of people, like, digging into her, and she's just getting more and more anxious stood there. But yeah, I agree with the, like, worry that it's going to get stuck in a rut. Like, it's already clear that the school is the school has these strange mechanics of, get 8 merits and you get given to the top table, get 8 demerits and you get expelled immediately, sort of thing. And it's like, okay, you're setting up a kind of complex system which is clearly going to be gamed as part of this, where making, this ±8 thing is going to be rolling on for a wee bit as the main sort of mode of operation. As the one thing that makes it kind of worrying for me is you've seen Twilight kind of appear around the edges as being, like, obviously a spy, so can dress up as, like, a member of, like, the faculty or something, which makes you slightly think about, why couldn't you have just dressed up on Parents' Day to see this agent, this other, like, target? So it's a bit kind of weird. And then you've got the assassin mother, who is there and really cool, but also just feels like she's from an entirely different series. And although she's a great fun character, it feels like the series at times has to make up reasons for her to be there, because her introduction is so bizarre as well, of her being an actual out and out killer, of like, oh, this person is actually a murderer. Like, she's very nice, clearly, but it's a case of, how do you fit this character into this plot line? Whereas if it goes full bore on Anya, while she is a little sweetie pie, it's gonna be, as you say, the rut. I can see it coming immediately.
Yeah, I did find myself wishing that kind of our serial killer Yoli, like, got a little bit more kind of play and a little bit more kind of time. in each page, because it feels like she's introduced as a kind of like, this is a snappy kind of like addition to the whole like weird family dynamic, but then it does often struggle to find anything to do with her. It's like Twilight's easy because he can go and do his spy stuff, but they do seem to kind of struggle figuring out like what they can make good use of her for. And like, she has a little moments, but she doesn't really get any major focus in these chapters, which I kind of felt like that was a bit of a shame, because I did want to see more of her.
Yeah, and also her art is really cool. Like, whenever she is doing her thing, the art goes completely ham, especially in composition and sort of structure and layering, and usually her hair is flying all over the shop, and she's got some kind of weapon in the foreground, and just the composition of the panels is really fun. Really cool, sort of like edgy frigging, like, exercise book cover almost. But yeah, there was that chapter that was like them going to the aquarium because they're trying to keep up cover. And if anything, I'd like more and more of that, of like the Voglers on the weekend trying to be normal, except they're all very not normal. Dun. So that sort of stuff is a lot more interesting than, this strange like school linear plot line. I mean, the idea is fine, but it's just that in execution, it's having to do a lot of stuff that is already looking kind of tired, even from the get-go, which is a shame.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was almost like my thing. Like, definitely, I had the same thought with the aquarium chapter. Is like, well, can we just get to the end of kind of like the current kind of major thing that our spy friend has to do, so that we can just have more family shenanigans, aquariums, etc., etc. Because that chapter was great on two levels. One, I enjoyed reading it. Two, I enjoyed imagining that as a level of the Hitman video game and thinking, man, I really hope they do one of those in an aquarium, because that would be.
Well,
great.
They already had one section where you can get a fish and smack people with it, so the code is already in there. IO, come on.
Yeah. It's like I want one where you get to murder people with a penguin, I guess, as well.
Oh, that'd be so fun. Oh God, yeah.
But the other thing is, like, did you make it to chapter 10 where they changed the names of the characters for localization purposes?
No, I only read up to chapter 9. I read this late last week, and I think I must have missed chapter 10 coming out. That's wild.
Yes.
That's so.
Yeah. So basically chapter 10 now, it starts with a full page. It's like, due to licensor requests, we've had to like change the names of these characters. So like Lloyd, spelled LLOYD, as in how you spell Lloyd as a name, is now just LOID. And
what?
It's like, who made this decision? Because they're wrong.
Yeah, that's wild. Also, that's wild, because this is an official service, and that kind of smacks of like fan subber nonsense. Like, that's the sort of shit that bubbles up on an IRC channel or a Discord nowadays, I suppose, for the young'uns, and then boils over into the series, and it's like, what? No, hang on, are you going to fix the stuff back? Like, can you? What? That's weird. That's completely wild. Yeah.
It's kind of weird, like 10 episodes in as well. Like, you see it sometimes, I mean, again, kind of like industry insider things. Sometimes, you get your first kind of pass of like, oh, hey, here are all the character names. And then they go back and like, actually, can you localize them as this? Because we feel like this is closer. But yeah, 10 chapters in is quite deep into a series, but it's just, like Yolu's name was changed slightly as well. I forget how they changed the spelling of that, but like neither of them really make sense in terms of like how you would spell those character names in a Western sense. So I'm not sure.
Sorry.
I'm not sure where that came from, but it's just a very strange. It was a very strange thing to see as the introduction to a chapter of like, we're changing these names, and it's like, you've changed them in a really weird way.
Yeah, that just opens up fissures in it where the world felt kind of self-sufficient, and now they've, like, Lloyd was a perfectly fine name, and now you've made it weird. Like, why'd you do that? That's weird. I want to go read that now. I need to go read that chapter after this recording. But that's so wild. Why would you do that? Like, knock it off. Very
yeah,
wild. Yeah, but I quite enjoyed this. I'm willing to read more. I'm happy to read more. I think it's weekly, so that's kind of an easy hook. You've made me a bit more trepidatious about it in the future. Maybe I was a bit Pollyanna-ish initially on it, thinking, oh, this is great. Yeah, spies and shit. Yay. Esper girl. But yeah, I do like this. I do like the series, though. Especially I like Anya. She's a real sweetie pie. It's the family aspect of it also, like, because it's a thrown together bunch of individuals. I quite enjoy that. I always enjoy these series that have like hey, we're not a real family, but what is a family? We're a family. Fuck anyone who says otherwise. Like, I always love that angle to stuff. I'm a real big sucker for it.
Yeah. There's definitely a fun element to that, and it's a weird thing because I think I was expecting a slightly different take on that. Like, I'm not sure exactly what it was I was expecting, but I think I think it was mostly like the whole Esper angle that threw me out. Like, I thought it was going to be the kind of kid having to figure this stuff out for themselves, rather than just be like, I read their minds and now I totally know what they are. But it does kind of work overall. And yeah, like I'd be interested to hear, you know, how it goes as things move on. Cause yeah, if it's playing a very long game with kind of, you know, the current mission in play, then that is less interesting to me than kind of getting that out of the way and being like, okay, well, we're done with this mission, but we're just going to carry on hanging out. Cause, you know, we're in a good place now, and just, you know, trying to balance kind of, you know, everyday life with doing spy stuff.
Yeah, I hope,
because that seems like it'd be a lot of
fun.
Fun.
Totally. I mean, the chapter where they're trying to pretend to be a real family to make the neighbors not suspicious is great, and I think more of that is good. Like, if, you know, Lloyd partially gets his identity found out and they have to kind of go on the lam, and that would be fun. Like, I mean, if they can use the sort of the initial plot setup as a way to transition to other systems and other sort of situations, that'd be great. Like, but we'll see. I mean, I'm still hopeful for it. But one thing I do like is the art. It's very striking. Like, as I mentioned, like, you get Yoru going full ham at times, and Lloyd is really quite sharp. And also, it's got some impeccable comedic timing, with just stuff that's happening and characters like being cool, super badasses. And, you know, there's a good one where Lloyd is like, nope, I'm a super spy. I'm very cool. I'm very relaxed. and then it pans back and he's punched someone. And it's like, oops, never mind. Never mind that. I'll just cover this up. So yeah, good fun. I do like it. It was kind of the thing, but yeah, I feel like I'm making up excuses for it almost, but yeah, I remain to be seen, but hopefully it will pull itself out of what could be a pretty dire pothole. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like, this is another series that has a good long kind of chunky first chapter. So if you just want to kind of try it, you know, and see where you sit with it, that first chapter is a pretty good introduction to at least vaguely what it's doing. Like, it doesn't kind of show all of its entire hands in one chapter, but you get a decent feel for kind of, you know, what it's putting down, and whether that's something that you might be interested in.
I feel like this is happening more often almost, where the first chapter is very, very long, like triple length almost, but it's also like almost a manifesto for the series of like, here is a large chunk of, like, if not totality, then a large chunk of what we seek to encompass in this series. Like, it almost reads like, hey, we had to submit a pilot, like, and here's the pilot, and it's almost self-sufficient. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's surprising for manga, but it's just the length of them now. It's getting wild. Like, you know, like I mentioned, Blue Flag was like an 80-page chapter, and on its own was almost like a perfectly sellable one-shot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I legit thought that I'd found another bug with Manga Plus when I first started loading up these chapters. Like, well, that page count isn't right. And then as I got through, it's like, oh no, it is. I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, it makes it real wild. But yeah, okay. Yeah, Spy Family. I really enjoyed it. Both of these series are ongoing on Manga Plus. So yeah, that's the end of our series for this week. This episode even, damn it, I always get that wrong. So what we're going to be looking at next time. For my part, I've decided to pull off a scab and read a series I've had on my tablet for a while, but never really sat down and had time for it. And that is Forbidden Scrollery, Volume 1. And Andy, what have you picked?
So I'm kind of sticking with my romantic tip for now. This is a series that I'd actually kind of seen, like, I think it's an OVA and a movie of, which are both weird because they're not like the very start of the story. But it's a Yuri manga that I've seen people kind of talking excitedly about, like, across the space of a good couple of years now, where people just keep bringing it up and like, oh, this is great. So I figured I should finally check it out. And that is Kaze-san and Morning Glories, Volume 1.
This is the first one in the series, because they all have different names and it's confusing. But yeah.
Yes, I think this is the first one. We shall find
out. Yeah, hopefully it's standalone if not. But yeah, I've heard loads of really positive things about this, and also this has been on my tablet for a while and not gone unread, because a bit scared of it almost because of the high regard it's put in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this, to both of these. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. If you go to our website, Screentone.club, you can find our past episodes. If you like the podcast, please consider telling a friend, recommending it to friends, posting about it on the Discord or whatever. That sort of stuff really helps get the word out there and get discovery going. You can also talk to us on Twitter at Screentone Club. And we also have an email, which is show@screentone.club. My name is Elliot Page, and you can find me at Elliot Page on Twitter, which will hopefully not be private anymore once this episode comes out. You can also find mangasir.ch, so it's manga search with a dot before the ch, and that is now functioning again, my UK digital manga search engine, so you can find where you can buy manga digitally legally. Hooray! It's working again after me basically leaving it to rot for a while and then having to restart it all over again because I'd forgotten what I'd written. Whoops. And Andy, how about you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Hannah's1979.
Aces. So, thank you everyone for listening and have a lovely time. See you soon. God damn it.
Bye, everyone.